7 years. God, it feels like another lifetime. When I met him, his name was Alex, and he was everything I thought I wanted. He had this magnetic, intense energy, you know? The kind that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. Those first few months were just a whirlwind. He wrote me songs, showed up at my job with bouquets of flowers, and told me that nobody got him the way I did. It felt like a movie, like I'd finally found this epic, once-in-a-lifetime love. But little things started to feel off. Tiny cracks I told myself I was imagining. The way his whole mood would sour if I even mentioned a guy from work. How he'd call my friends distractions and make me feel guilty for wanting to see them. He'd always say it was just because he loved me so much he couldn't stand being away from me. And I actually believed him. I wanted to believe him. Because thinking about what it really meant was just too scary. Love isn't supposed to feel like a cage, but the walls of his were closing in. Pretty soon, the grand gestures were gone. They were replaced by this quiet, suffocating control. He had to have all my passwords. He'd scroll through my phone every night. He'd grill me about every single charge on my bank statements. My world just got smaller and smaller until he was the only thing in it, the one who decided if I was happy or terrified. The head games were non-stop. He'd tell me my dreams were silly, that I wasn't smart enough to go back to school. Then, just when I felt worthless, he'd shower me with praise, so I'd need his approval just to feel okay. The isolation was the worst part, though. He was an expert at twisting things, making me believe my own family was against us. He'd pick fights, blow tiny disagreements way out of proportion, until I just felt so alone that I stopped calling them. He made me think he was the only one I could trust. Looking back, I see the playbook for what it was. Isolate your target, make them dependent, and control the entire story. The threats started small. "I don't know what I'd do without you," slowly morphed into, "Don't even think about leaving me." The look in his eyes when he'd say it was chilling. I was walking on eggshells 24/7. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was a hostage in my own life. There wasn't one big, dramatic moment that made me leave. It was more like the slow, soul-crushing realization that if I stayed, I was going to vanish completely. I was already a ghost in my own life. I had to get out. It took me 3 months to plan it. I opened a secret bank account and started sneaking a few dollars into it whenever I could. I reached out to one old friend he'd never managed to scare away and started having mail sent to her house. I waited until he was out of town for work. I packed a single bag, just the absolute essentials. No photos, no mementos, nothing that would weigh me down. I remember my hands shook so hard I could barely get the key into the ignition. I put the car in drive, and I didn't look back. I just drove. 2 days later, he called. To this day, I have no idea how he got my new number. His voice wasn't angry or loud. It was terrifyingly calm. He just said, "You can run, but you can't hide. I will always find you, and if I ever see you with someone else, I'll kill you both, I promise." And then he hung up. It wasn't a threat shouted in anger. It was a cold, simple promise, and I knew he meant every word. For the next 7 years, I basically lived like a fugitive. I moved 1,000 miles away to a city where nobody knew me. I legally changed my last name. I got really good at being invisible. But the fear? It never really goes away. It's just this low hum of anxiety under the surface. Every time a car drove too slowly down my street, my heart would try to climb out of my throat. Every call from an unknown number felt like a threat. But bit by bit, I built a life. I got a job. I made new friends, people who only knew the new me, the one who wasn't afraid. And then I met my husband, Mark. He was the opposite of Alex in every way. Kind, patient, and gentle. He knew my story, and he never made me feel damaged. He made me feel safe. For the first time in forever, I felt like I could actually breathe. We got married, bought a little house in a quiet neighborhood, and then came the greatest joy and the greatest terror of my life, our son, Leo. The second I held him, I felt this love that was so fierce it scared me. It also raised the stakes to an impossible new level. My fear wasn't just for me anymore. It was for this tiny, perfect person who trusted me with everything. That's when I told Mark we needed security cameras. He thought I was being paranoid, but he didn't fight me on it. How could I explain that for someone like me? The fear never really dies. You just learn how to carry it. And now, here he was. On my porch. 7 years of running had led right back to this moment. All the air left my lungs. A panic attack was clawing its way up my throat, chest tight, vision narrowing. He looked older, his face harder, but it was him. That same predatory stillness. He lifted the crowbar and tapped it on the doorframe. Thump, thump, a little signal. He wanted me to know he was there. He wanted me to be afraid. My mind was screaming. Leo was asleep in his crib. Mark was out of town. I was alone. My whole body was shaking, just pure animal terror. His promise echoed in my head. If I ever see you with someone else. He knew. He must have found out about Mark and Leo. He wasn't here just to scare me. He was here to keep his promise. I slid out of bed and crept to the bedroom door, locking it. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slipping on the glass. My first instinct was to grab Leo and hide in the closet, to just disappear. But then something else cut through the noise in my head. No, not again. I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I was a mother, and he was not getting to my son. My fingers finally worked. I dialed 911. The operator's voice was so calm, a crazy contrast to my choked whisper explaining that my stalker was on my front porch with a crowbar. She told me to stay on the line, that officers were coming. I could hear him at the front door now, the sickening scrape of metal against the lock. The entire world was just that sound and my own ragged breathing. I slipped into Leo's room. He was still fast asleep, with no idea that a monster was just a few feet away. I planted myself between his crib and the door. He would have to go through me first. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. The scraping stopped. Then I heard car doors slam, followed by shouting. "Police! Drop the weapon! Get on the ground!" I held my breath. There was a scuffle, more yelling, and then silence. A thick, heavy silence. A moment later, the 911 operator's voice was in my ear. He was in custody. It was over. That night wasn't just the end of a nightmare. It was the beginning of understanding the trauma that had quietly shaped my entire adult life. If any part of my story sounds familiar, or if you're worried about someone you know, please share this. Sometimes, just knowing you're not alone is the first step toward getting out.